Welcome to the Energy InSites podcast, your source for the latest insights in deep retrofits, renewable energy, and energy conservation. And now let's get to today's insights. My guest today turned his own frustration with baseboard heaters into a company that has put more than 1 million smart thermostats into homes across North America. He's the co-founder and CEO of Mysa, Joshua Green. Josh, welcome to Energy InSites.
Thank you. Yeah, really excited to be speaking with you today, Kevin.
Yeah, we met at the Retrofit Canada conference in Halifax. I guess it was maybe a month or two back now. Super exciting times. Really enjoyed your presentation, learning about your company, and I wanted to share that with the world. Why don't we start with you? Like, this is another entrepreneurial success story, innovation made in Canada. You and your brother started this.
Yeah, basically a decade ago now at this point.
Yeah, and you're still a young man, so this is like kind of straight out of university stuff. So
That's
why
right,
don't you
yeah.
walk us through a little bit about the genesis of this business? Because for one thing, I'll spoil it for people. You're coming out of Newfoundland.
That's
So
right, yeah.
I'm twice as impressed, because normally when we think about technology companies in this country, it's Toronto, it's Waterloo, it's Vancouver. You don't normally think of St. John's, Newfoundland. So I just want to give you guys a really big shout out for that. And it's so great to see coast to coast innovation. Tell us about how this all started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get into my story and how St. John's and Newfoundland has been our home base. But over the last 5 years, especially, St. John's, from a tech perspective, has been really taking off and punching above its weight. So if anyone who's interested in learning more about great tech companies here in St. John's, there's a whole host of them to look at. So really proud of being part of this ecosystem here. But yeah, so my story, like you said, right out of university is kind of how I first got into entrepreneurship right out of the gates. So I did a Bachelor of Engineering, Mechanical Engineering degree, and through that degree, I became really passionate, excited, somewhat obsessed, some perhaps could say, about everything related to energy efficiency, HVAC, heating and cooling and ventilation, sustainable energy. All of these things were just something that I just really gravitated towards. So I knew that when I graduated from university, I wanted to be working in that sphere of things. I didn't know at the time that it was going to turn into a smart thermostat company that we'll talk at length about today, but I knew that it was in that general vicinity. And so luckily, I had parents and especially a father who was just like, "Hey, entrepreneurship is a really challenging but fulfilling path that a lot of people can take." And so I gave it a go. Basically, coming out of university, a bunch of my friends who graduated with me took full-time jobs with companies, great companies doing things, and I took the less safe route and said I'm going to go at it on my own. And that was definitely. I think back at the time it felt kind of like what else do I have to lose? But I can see now looking back, it was like, well, that was definitely kind of a risky move to to not follow my friends along.
Yeah, no kidding. I can tell you from my own entrepreneurial experiences, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. The overnight success is 10 years in the making. And everybody, thinks it was luck or it was easy when they see somebody kind of at the top of the podium, but they often miss, the days in the dirt that it took to get you there, the hard days, the hard conversations, the hirings and firings, the raising money, the setbacks and challenges. And so, you started this with your brother. Which is even more rare, and another kind of kudos, because I know they say don't mix business and family. And sometimes it works out phenomenally well, and sometimes it doesn't. It looks like in your case, you guys have found the right balance, and you're really motoring now.
Yeah, well, so he's 3 years younger than me, graduated same mechanical engineering 3 years after I did. So I basically started this company, like I said, in the sphere of energy efficiency, energy management. And at the time, it was basically two different things we were doing. I was doing uh, residential home energy audits was like the first thing that I was doing. So putting myself out there, my expertise, the training that I got at university, going into homes here in St. John's, doing full top to bottom evaluations about how a home can be more energy efficient with upgrades, control strategies, and outlining plans and what our ROIs of those things were. So over the span of about 3 years, I did about 30 of these residential energy audits here in St. John's, and like it was a rewarding experience. Like it was on one hand, I had zero business training, knew nothing about business, didn't scared to death to talk to customers, but I pushed through it and learned a lot from engaging with these 30 odd homeowners, talking to customers, providing great service to them, all that kind of stuff. So it was a challenging but rewarding time. But like each one of those energy audits, I probably is like about made $300. So
Right.
30 energy audits times $300. So it wasn't like I was a great business. And then Zach comes along right at the end of university. He had also done some entrepreneurship courses in university. And he said, Josh, I think I need to help you get this business going. And so right around when he graduated, he joined. Also somewhat from these energy audits, stumbled upon this idea that there was homes here in St. John's that had electric baseboard heating that wanted to use a smart thermostat like a Nest or an Ecobee. And when you do the homework to find out is that possible, you realize that a Nest or an Ecobee or any smart thermostat that was on the market was just not compatible with electric baseboard heating. And so Zach luckily got us in with the local startup incubator called the Genesis Center through Memorial University. They brought us in. We got some great mentors who helped us think about, okay, how big is the market? What's the total addressable market? What market size do you think you can actually get to? What is the competitors in the space? There wasn't any, but was Nest or Ecobee going to go into this market? So ultimately, that was the really birth of birth of Mysa, was that we saw this market opportunity. Nobody was serving it. 1 in 3 homes in Canada had electric baseboard heating, so could not use Nest or Ecobee. And that was really how we got started. Zach joined the business right at that time, and then we got going.
And is that mostly because of the wiring? Like what was it that made those not function on a baseboard heater versus a forced air furnace?
Yeah, it was simply just down to the electrical wiring. So a typical furnace, central based, operates on 24-volt control signals, and so a thermostat is just sending, hey, heat or a cool signal to the furnace, and it goes and heats or cools. But with electric baseboard heating, the way that it actually works is the thermostat itself has a high voltage, high amperage relay that actually turns the baseboard heater on and off. So
it's like a light switch. It's actually bringing power to the device.
It's just like a light switch, line voltage light switch. Yeah. So it's a completely different. You just could not. You could rig things up, and people did like with intermediate relays, but you had to hack it together. There was no like drop in solution, which is what people wanted, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay.
So yeah, so we I'll give credit to Zach here, who kind of made some important linkage. So I'm the kind of the tech guy. I started prototyping, building out this high voltage, high amperage relay. What is the control thing? What do the buttons look like? All that kind of stuff. But Zach was smart, and he was very resourceful. So even though he came from an engineering background, he took on basically, how do we market this thing? How do we find customers? And so through sheer force of will, researching like how to build a website, how to put a checkout page, e-commerce, do advertising, drive people to this web page, we were able to put this out to the world and actually find out that there were lots of people who wanted to buy such a product if we built it. So we kind of did like a quasi Kickstarter campaign to figure out if people would actually want to buy this thing. And so like I remember when the first stranger ordered a Mysa thermostat, I think he was down in like Vermont or something. I was like, wow, some
Right on.
strangers put their credit card in and wants to buy this product that we are at that time was just an image. Like there was
Yeah.
no real product to buy, right? And then like over the span of about 12 months while we built the product, we collected roughly $750,000 of pre-orders
Oh,
for the
wow.
product before we even shipped it. So by the time we had hired a team, it was like about a team of a dozen people, software developers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. And by the time we actually brought the product all the way through, and it might be interesting to talk about through some of the challenges of bringing that first product through. Yeah, $750,000 of pre-orders from about, I think it was roughly like 4,000 or 5,000 customers had pre-ordered our product. And then
That's amazing.
as soon as it was ready, kind of March 2018, we had a whole customer bank to fulfill.
Yeah, that's like unbelievable, actually. And was your first iteration a smart thermostat or just like a programmable one? Because even that wasn't available, or still typically isn't common, right? You just set it at 21, and then when the temperature in the room goes to that, it just clicks on or clicks off. You're not saying at 2 a.m. do this or 3 p.m. do that.
We went straight to smart thermostat. Again, like Zach and I think one of the things kind of growing up, we were always the techies. Like we would be watching Apple product announcement videos. We would be like always into the latest gadget or thing that was happening. So like tech was just in our DNA. And so like when this opportunity and problem presented itself, so at that time, like again, Nest had already been around for a while, so it was kind of easy to make the dots that no, what we need to do is build a smart thermostat for baseboard heating and just go
Yeah.
right to
So
where it should be.
you've got this form factor, you've got a high voltage relay, you've got a control system, that some kind of algorithm, and you've got a digital display that you've packed
Yeah,
all into this little guy.
that's it. It's like it wasn't like a super novel, hard engineering problem per se. It was kind of take this part, and put them together, package it, make it beautiful, make it work, make the software work. And
Well,
that
it's
was the
amazing to have you say that. I mean, I look at it as like that sounds pretty intimidating to try and pull that off, in a way that comes out looking like an iPod or an iPhone.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
kudos to you guys.
And there was a lot of challenges that like I said, we had to hire electrical engineers because Zach and I knew nothing about circuitry and how to design printed circuit boards and
Right.
micro coprocessors. This was like all over our heads. So we had to hire electrical engineers to help us with that.
Amazing.
We had to hire software developers that had to stitch everything together from firmware to cloud to mobile applications. So we had to hire a whole team of software developers to be able to do that. But yeah, so brought all those pieces together. We shipped the first ones to customers, and thank goodness they thought that the product was great, got great reviews, and then we kept scaling from there.
And so the earliest iteration of its smartness, because I'm assuming like you launched this product before you had utility demand response programs
Yes.
going on. So you're putting it out there more so for the homeowner to have
Yep.
like remote control over their
Yep.
app, be
That's,
able to see check in on it, see what's going on in the living room, and
yep.
make a change.
That's exactly right. We also at the time like a smart home in terms of Apple HomeKit and Alexa, using your voice to control things in your house was becoming this like thing that was not common, right? It was like
Right.
when Alexa came on the scene, and then Google followed quickly, and then Apple's Siri came out. People started saying, "Hey, change the bedroom temperature to 23." All right, so that was something that you could do with Mysa thermostat right from the very beginning. So
Really? So you guys also added voice to the
yep.
mix.
Yeah, we
Wow.
right from day one had all of those smart home integrations baked in right into the software, so people could use voice to change temperature in any room. And so, for your listeners who maybe aren't familiar with baseboard heating, one of the unique things here is there isn't just one thermostat for the whole house, right? The way that baseboard heating works is you actually have one thermostat per room that you want to control. So a typical home, as you can imagine, may have 10 thermostats, may have 20 thermostats in some larger homes, right? So you then not just have control of your house, you have on a room by room basis, you could dial in the temperature to exactly what you want so that you didn't have to heat that specific room when you were not in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was what we had at day one. You're right. We had none of the utility demand response stuff that we have today, and some more of the kind of advanced energy efficiency, load shedding stuff that we do today. That was not in the kind of V1 of the product. It was just fulfilling this kind of base smart home kind of demand.
Yeah, which in and of itself is a big market and obviously found a ready audience very quickly. People get it. They were probably already just pent up frustration that they have sort of dumb thermostats, if you will.
Exactly. Like, and just like the easiest kind of point of that was like what was effective was running Google ads on Nest for baseboard heating. Like that just literally running
I
ads
love
on
it.
Google ads for Nest for baseboard heating did phenomenally well.
A
And
little
like you
guerrilla
said,
marketing right there.
just capturing the pent up demand that was kind of already built there, right? So we definitely leveraged that and was lucky that pent up demand was there.
Wow. That's genius. You guys have done a bunch of cool initiatives. So now you've got this product out there. You've got and people are starting to see savings.
Yep.
So let's walk through where the savings come from.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned, because each home or each room in the home has its own thermostat, it gives a ton of flexibility to don't heat the rooms that you don't need to heat.
Mm,
And so whether it's a basement that unoccupied over the night, or it could be a guest room that people are maybe coming in and out of. You can really do setbacks, temperature setbacks, so that you're not heating those rooms when you need to, and then heat them up before you actually need to get back into the space. Um, we have other users who have it in like secondary homes, right? Like cottages is another super popular thing for electric baseboard heating. So, hey, I don't want to heat my cottage while I'm not there, but I want to preheat it by the time I get to my secondary cottage. So it's nice and toasty warm when I get there. But the energy savings comes from the setbacks. And
mm,
that savings, depending on how, let's say that you were controlling your thermostats beforehand, could range from anywhere from 10 to 15% energy savings based on utilization. And the other key piece here that made this effective is some of your viewers may know, electric baseboard heating is actually a very energy intensive form of heating. Like a heat pump is a more energy efficient, more performative type of heating system. Electric resistance, you have, for every 1 kilowatt of electricity goes in, 1 kilowatt hour of heat goes out. So it's not that actually efficient compared to a heat pump where you can get 3 or 4x the heat out. So therefore, every savings that you can get from controlling your baseboard heating is actually much higher than you could get from, let's say, a traditional thermostat. So the savings were higher, and you had this ability to do the multi-room scheduling for setbacks.
right. And it's primarily just from dialing it down when
Yep,
you're not around
that's
and
right.
having
Yep,
that ability to just shift. It's essentially scheduling
yep,
of the usage of it to optimize for your lifestyle.
yep.
And therefore you're just not having it on when it doesn't need to be, or it's lower on average than it was before.
Yeah. So
Just giving you that much more control.
yeah, I mean, that's like the base kind of scheduling feature. Over the years, we added things about like learning how long it takes for a room to heat up. And so then,
Right.
as opposed to you just kind of hard coding, hey, I want the heat to come on at this time, we would be able to learn to say, okay, well, actually, we don't need to start heating until this time. So we can actually save you energy by not turning on sooner than we need to. So over time, we were add more smarts to the thermostat, and then layer on some of the utility load shed stuff that I know we're going to get to.
So did you send
Yeah.
out like a newsletter, or there was some kind of a pop-up notification on the app to let homeowners know, hey, turns out if you're on your way up to the cottage, and you want to get up 3 degrees, just give yourself 15 minutes? Or how did you communicate that?
Yeah, so we take we really truly believe in, and maybe this is like one of the lessons we got from thinking about Apple and trying to imitate them. I think people can say that they're arguably probably one of the most successful tech companies of all time, and I think one of the reasons that they've been successful is how user friendly and how they just kind of let the technology almost fade to the background, and it's about the customer experience. So we really focus on that at Mysa. So both our mobile application, but even so you mentioned communications. So communications to the users can come through in-app notifications. It could come from emails that we send users, and we really try to make that communications really informative and helpful to our users. So it could be notifying them. So in this case of the smart early on feature, it was, hey, we've developed a new feature. All you got to go and do is turn it on. There was actually no more
Mm.
complicated setup. It was just, hey, just turn the toggle on. We take care of everything for you, and it will automatically figure out when to turn the thermostat on and off, and not put more burdensome like, hey, go adjust your schedule. We would just do it automatically for them when just flip up a switch.
Oh, wow. Okay. So forgive me, I'm just trying to picture a homeowner who's like out and about and doing different things. How does it know how soon they'll be there?
Yeah, so sorry, I should back up. It works mostly on the scheduling feature, not necessarily on like when they're coming and going during the day. But let's say in the morning, so they
Yeah.
scheduled their setback to happen. So the temperature goes down overnight, and then in the morning they've scheduled it to come back on. Well, what
Yeah.
we determined over time was that schedule to come back up based on how long it's taken, we could optimize on that schedule learning. So yeah, the learning was on the scheduling part, not so much on the hey, customer is out at the mall and they're coming back. That was a bit harder one to be
Right.
able to do.
Imagine with location services, maybe you actually could get there on that too.
Yes, possibly
I don't know
for
if that's
sure.
something that people want, which actually maybe is a good segue to the next chapter here into demand response and virtual power plants,
Yeah.
and the pros and cons of that, what you guys have done with that, and where the segue I'm thinking about is on privacy related stuff. So
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people don't really understand what demand response is, what a virtual power plant is, why they should care, why the
Hmm.
grid cares, the utility providers care, and what the kind of synergy is when they band together as a group.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, starting out, there was no grand vision that this was the direction it was going to go. But literally, once we had a smart thermostat for baseboard heating out there, we had electric utilities approach us saying, "Hey, finally, there's a line voltage baseboard thermostat, and it's a smart one. Let us tell you about some of the things that we're doing with demand response on the low voltage 24-volt thermostat side, and we'd love to be able to do the same thing with baseboard heating." So it was like this
Wow.
journey of actually learning about it that the utilities brought us into very organically.
So just to give a shout out to the most progressive among utilities, because I know utilities are big battleships that are generally slow and to turn around or change course. So who are some of the early pioneers that saw this and reached out to you, if you're okay sharing?
Yeah, well, so the one that we've been working with the longest, and at this stage is still our largest virtual power plant in terms of sheer number of devices participating, is BC Hydro in British
Okay.
Columbia. So they very early on said they have, and just I want to go back to like your what does this serve, right? So
Yeah.
utilities, their job number one is match supply of electricity with the demand of the electricity. That's their job. And every single day they are having to make sure, do we have enough megawatts of supply and generation to match how much electricity homes, businesses, industry is needing? So that's what they're always trying to constantly manage, supply and demand.
Yeah.
And kind of legacy, it's always like, okay, we've always got to change the generation to match the demand because that's the only tool that they had. That presented a lot of issues. Like you can only turn on power plants, like fossil fuel generation plants, so quickly. You
Right.
can only shift load so much on the generation side. But what started happening on the demand side was recognizing that through subtle little tiny adjustments on the demand side of things, we could delay or do it earlier when the energy is actually used to match the generation, and basically reduce peaks is the key thing here. And so
Yeah.
when we talk about load shedding, it's about reducing the peaks on the grid that is advantageous to the utility, so that they don't have to bring on peaking generation and have to create more generation.
Right.
So that's what it's about. It's about shifting load to make it easier for the utilities. So
And
BC Hydro, like you said, they were the ones who saw that this was an important, and I like to think of things like a tool in the toolbox, because
right.
as society, utilities work towards decarbonization, as we work towards making things more energy efficient, as we working to decarbonize, there is no like single solution, right? It's a full toolbox of solutions that together can kind of get us there. So this demand response stuff is one of those tools in the toolbox, and BC Hydro very early on recognized that this was an important tool to invest in, and worked with Mysa to develop essentially this ability and software, the data privacy, cybersecurity, all the things that you mentioned there that are tangentially around this. So shout out to them to being a great partner early on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know one of the things that's been coming up in our world a lot is how, we're moving so fast towards this goal of electrification and decarbonization, um, but almost too fast insofar as the grid is
Mm-hmm.
already at a certain limit. If
Right.
everybody went off natural gas tomorrow and put on EVs and put on electric, whether it's a heat pump or electric baseboard, I mean, obviously a heat pump's going to be more efficient, but you're
Yeah.
still adding load. You're adding load, adding load, adding load, and you don't immediately add another wind farm or another solar farm or another hydro dam or another gas plant. I mean, those things take years, sometimes
Absolutely.
decades, to add to the grid. So what you really have to do is be having equal as much emphasis on conservation
Yes.
and demand management, to buy yourself time to bring online those big generators,
Yes.
and ideally more renewable generators. But
Yeah.
those are intermittent, and so those come with their own set of problems. A
Yeah.
lot of times, like when you think about solar on a bell curve, your peak solar is in the middle of the day, but your peak demand is usually in the morning and in the evening.
That's
So
right.
so solar isn't necessarily giving you what you need when you need it.
Yeah.
And then you're getting into energy storage, and that's a whole other topic that is up and coming, but not maybe prime time across the board yet.
Yep. No, I love how you phrased it and how you position that. That's exactly right. Like we are the electrification of transport with EVs, the electrification of heating with heat pumps. These are all fantastic things that must happen, and the faster the better. But you're right; it presents the secondary challenge of meeting that demand, and utilities everywhere. Depending on their situation, it could be either at a macro bulk level in terms of total generation, or what's actually becoming really prevalent now is actually more at the feeder level. So you take a particular neighborhood that's is a lot of electric heat or a lot of electric EVs hopping onto that feeder, and now that feeder that was designed for not this electrified world is really seeing pressure.
Yeah.
And so being able to go at this kind of more micro levels, kind of almost surgical load relief in at a neighborhood level, is something that that utilities all over are really trying to find to buy them time.
Yeah.
Exactly how you said it, right? And so Canada, the federal government, obviously the last couple of months talked about their uh, large investment and strategy in I think if I got it right, doubling the electricity generation for Canada
Wow.
nationwide, and that's a big goal to work towards, and the generation to pull that on will take time, and it's a great thing. But in the short term, we need solutions so that we can continue our electrification and decarbonization journey with EVs and heat pumps.
Absolutely. And I started my entrepreneurial journey in renewable energy generation development, and it was a very hard road. Very, very hard road. We had some setbacks, and I'll say failures. I'll chalk them up as life lessons. But it's very hard to build a megawatt. It's
Yep.
very expensive and very time consuming. It's actually, on a relative basis, extremely easy to save a megawatt, with the right people at the table. And it's a lot cheaper, right?
Yep.
And so I think on a political level, like kind of a media level, it's very sexy and exciting to talk about some new build big project. It's less interesting to talk about how I changed my light bulbs and I, dropped my load by 1 million kilowatt hours a year or whatever. But that's actually really where we can get these big gains. And,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think,
yeah, it's just like the data point that I throw out with people. Basically, energy efficiency, conservation, demand management is anywhere from 3 to 6 times cheaper than new
yeah,
generation. That's the rough order of magnitude. 3 to 6 times cheaper with energy conservation and demand management.
yeah. And it actually explains very rationally why utility companies are interested in incentivizing this behavior,
Yeah,
because it's actually cheaper for them to manage their grid by supporting homeowners in this way than it is to add another 100-kilometer high tension, high voltage line, getting right of ways and all the stuff that has to happen with that.
yeah,
Um, we the old saying of think globally, act locally, I think really applies here. And I know that a lot of people have kind of climate change anxiety and they feel like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm just a little guy. How can I make a difference? But your system really does allow people to kind of aggregate
mhm.
their little thing that on a micro level seems like nothing. But when you do it on a neighborhood and community level, it's something. Can we talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, big time. So again, I think I can kind of use the BC Hydro example. So we have 50,000 thermostats in British Columbia right now enrolled in the Peak Saver program that BC Hydro operates. So those 50,000 thermostats, each one individually is only making a micro adjustment, a couple of degrees for like a couple of hours. And so the impact on the individual homeowner is quite small. They often don't even know that the change is happening when it's done correctly. But then when you take that one change on one thermostat and you multiply it by 50,000 thermostats, you are now shifting megawatts
Wow.
of load, right? So little tiny change times 50,000 equals megawatts of change. And as these numbers scale, another great Canadian utility that's also doing great work in this space is Hydro Quebec. They've also expanded to over hundreds of thousands, and they're going to go to millions of thermostats. And as they approach millions of thermostats, they're not just going to do megawatts, they're going to do a gigawatt of load shifting through this
Wow.
technology. So it really scales, right? Every single device times a large number of devices makes a big change. And so I think like that's the thing that I think like the homeowners that participate in this, they also get extra savings. So you mentioned like the savings can come from energy efficiency, but if you as a homeowner can earn additional savings from this load shifting, now your savings financially are even greater. But ultimately there's also this, hey, I'm participating in making the grid more flexible, more resilient, and I'm contributing to the overall health and well-being of the electric grid system that I'm part of.
Absolutely. So for all those homeowners out there and asset managers out there or apartment building landlords, um, this is really a low-hanging fruit opportunity to make a difference in your own wallet, as if that's your primary motivator, but also on a ecosystem, planetary grid sustainability, reliability perspective as well. I know a lot of folks maybe don't look favorably upon utilities for their environmental impact. And this is an example of the utilities actually doing something really positive, incremental. It makes a big difference when you act together as a group. So I can't think of a lot of better examples where a small action can have a big ripple out to make an aggregate difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really like one of those win-win-win scenarios, right? Like it's a win for the customer. Obviously, it's a win for Mysa, and it's a win for the utility. So it's a great situation.
So where can people get these devices currently?
So several different ways, and I should maybe also say, so we started out with electric baseboard heating, and that is still kind of like our most popular product today because it's been around the longest. But over the years, our R&D team has actually built out now all of the different types of smart thermostats that exist. So our second product was for electric in-floor heating that people have, common in like bathrooms, heated floors, porches, that kind of thing. Then we came out with one for ductless mini split heat pumps. That's super popular right now, and being added on to homes that have electric baseboard heating already. They're adding on mini splits for both cooling and energy efficiency. There's an interesting storyline there about how the integrated controls of those two systems needs to operate, but we'll come back to that. And then our most recent product is we now have a low voltage 24 volt thermostat like Nest and Ecobee that's part of our whole lineup of products. So if somebody goes to our website at getmysa.com, they see our full lineup of products, and no longer it's about, do I have baseboard heating? It's Mysa. It's, hey, what type of thermostat do you have? Mysa has a thermostat for you. And so
Right.
we're excited to be in that position. So yeah, our website is a very popular place that people buy our products. We also sell them on Amazon. So that e-commerce is one of our very strong suits. But our products are also available in a bunch of retailers. So across Canada, for example, we're in Costco, Home Depot, Best Buy. Out in Atlantic Canada, we're in Kent. So
Wow.
bunch of the retailers you can pick up our products. And then sometimes utilities will have direct programs themselves where if you go through the utility, they might have a utility marketplace. It might be a utility direct install program. You can get our products and often subsidized directly when you go that route through the utility. So a bunch of different ways that you can go.
So that's a good first step is check with your local utility to see if they have a demand response program in place, and then
Yeah,
you
and
might be able
we
to get
make
an
it easy.
incentive.
We make it easy on our website to be able to do that. Like,
Okay.
so if you go to get Mysa, it'll ask you to like put in your postal code, and then we'll automatically show you the utility programs that are available in your region.
Oh,
So
great.
if customer comes and they put a BC Hydro or a British Columbia postal code in, we surface the rebates that are available through BC Hydro, and that happens no matter what province and state you are in.
And you mentioned how people are putting in the mini split heat pumps now. So is that typically in addition to, so they kind of have a backup? They still have their backup baseboard heating, but it's more so pulling from the heat pump. And then in those cases, are they needing to get a second device because of the way it's wired, or are they able to kind of piggyback on the one device and do both?
Yeah, great question. So for homes that have electric baseboard heating, they don't have any ductwork, right? Like a furnace and an air conditioning system might have. So for those homes, it would be easy for them to just change the outside unit with a heat pump that then pushes air, hot air, cold air through all this ductwork. For a home that has baseboard heating that has no ductwork, the really only option or the easiest option is adding a mini split, which is I put my heat pump compressor outside and I put however many heads of a mini split that I need in through my house. So it's the most logistically easy way to install a heat pump in a home that doesn't have ductwork. So this has just taken off in the last decade, especially the last 5 years. It seems like, especially here, again, my home province of Newfoundland, but I spend a lot of time all of Atlantic Canada. Heat pumps are like all the rage. It's like almost every home has a heat pump these days, and they're most often mini splits. So the downside, though, that's the challenge with how these mini split heat pumps have been installed, is that the controls are completely separate from the existing controls that were there for the baseboard heater. And
Right.
typically, these mini splits, heat pumps, air conditioners, are controlled by just a remote, right? You point over at the air conditioner, heat
Yeah.
pump, you turn it on, and that's the control for the mini
It's not
split.
even that smart, right? It's just it's a
There's no
remote, which is
smarts.
kind of convenient, you know, but now you've got a remote in every room. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said multi-head, so you got sort of a manifold on the heat pump outside, and now you've got these lines running across the side of your house to the different rooms.
Yeah, sometimes they can be single head units, so just one, but
Yeah.
often they are a multi-head unit, right? You might have a head on your main floor and maybe another one up in your bedroom.
Yeah.
But like these, like some people have like five, six heads throughout the different spaces in the room. So yeah,
Right. Depending
multi-head.
on the model and the BTUs or gigajoules that you want to throw.
Yeah, yeah, and how their home construction is, right? Like
Yeah.
an open concept type home could get away with just one head because that it can kind of blow the air throughout this large open concept space. For a home that is more room like compartmentalized, you kind of need to have multiple heads to be able to reach those different homes. So the home construction matters a lot too. So yeah, so the challenge though is how do you integrate those two controls that were never integrated?
Right.
Because without them integrated, what can happen is again. I don't think people think about heating and cooling as much as like I don't know. I think about heating and cooling. It's like, hey, I just want my home to be comfortable, right? Am I hot or am I cold, right? So like I turn the air conditioning on if I'm cold, but you don't know if somebody else, another family member in the house, was cold, and they might have turned the electric baseboard heating on. So you could have cooling and heating happening at the exact same time. The two systems don't know anything about it, and you're just
Right.
wasting electricity at that point.
Yeah.
So what you would want is the two systems to be able to talk to each other so that when one is cooling, the other one is off, or when one is heating, the other is off. So this is an integrated controls strategy that Mysa is bringing to the table. So we have a controller that basically mimics the remote that controls the mini split. And so you do need another device to answer your question. You have to have a Mysa device controller to control your heat pump. You have to have another thermostat to control the baseboard heater. Again, they're very different controllers, so it was not feasible to have like an all-in-one solution
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
could control both. So it's two separate pieces of hardware. But then in the software and in the Mysa app, that's when it's all in one place. And later this year, we're going to be rolling out this integrated control strategy that really be able to treat it not as two separate things, but as one control surface, so
Right
that it
on.
really brings that integrated control strategy.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of those old school remote controls where you would like point them at each other and they would train it on
Yep.
like the universal remote. You would learn your Samsung or your
That's
Toshiba.
essentially what our product is. It's a universal remote IR base for controlling your mini split. Is essentially what the product is.
But a wall mounted
Yeah,
unit.
and it's got a temperature sensor in there, and it's got a display and you at set points and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, there's some good technology there. Yeah.
Amazing. So in the minutes that we've got left, a privacy, let's touch on privacy and a virtual power plant. How does that differ from a demand response program? Is that the same thing? Another way of saying the same thing? Or what are we talking about when we hear that?
Yeah, good question. I think the industry kind of loosely kind of uses those two terms kind of interchangeably sometimes. Like demand response is a thing that happens. Virtual power plant could be the thing that is actually built, the asset, or which is a collection of multiple assets. So like we've been talking about thermostats on this call, but also part of a virtual power plant that a utility would operate. They could also have smart EV chargers that change when they charge the car. And maybe in a vehicle to grid situation in the future, that car is actually feeding into the grid. So it ultimately becomes like a battery. Also solar, distributed solar feeds into this kind of broader virtual power plant umbrella. And so this virtual power plant is kind of like this collection of multiple asset types. It's not just thermostats and HVAC, it's batteries, it's solar, it's generation, it's that kind of stuff, right?
Right
And
on.
the demand response is more, okay, for the devices in that virtual power plant that can kind of do this load shifting, that's what the demand response piece is.
Got it. That's a great explanation. Thank you. Demand response really nests in, pardon the pun, inside
Yes.
a virtual power plant environment.
Yep.
The virtual power plant allows you to do all kinds of different things that
That's right.
collectively act as if you had a power plant.
That's
where
right.
you have all kinds of control, and demand response is just kind of one element of that.
Yeah, you got it. So yeah, on cybersecurity data, this is a big one. Of course, people's privacy and control in their own home is extremely important. The idea of people being able to see when my heating and cooling is happening, or in some cases actually controlling adjustments of it, it's a very important thing that people feel comfortable on how it's happening and what are the limits of it. So again, we a little bit had the benefit that there were others ahead of us that kind of was doing demand response, especially in the United States, more on the air conditioning side. Like it's been something that's been happening like the better part of a decade now. So there's lots of companies out there that have been there, done it, tried a bunch of things, made a lot of mistakes that we could then take and leverage from, right? So for example, just like one of the things that happened, this was several years ago now, but there was a program, a demand response program, I can't remember which state it was, where the utility and the provider of the thermostats wrongfully locked the thermostat so that the user couldn't override a demand response event.
Right.
So again, the demand response event, when it's running, it may lower or raise the set point based on if it's heating or cooling. Customer says, hey, I actually don't want to participate in this particular demand response event. They should be able to go over to the thermostat or open up the app and change the temperature no matter what. But there was this
Yeah,
utility program that said, hey, we're going to lock it so that you can't do that.
because
And
we
the
need the
amount,
demand response, so we're taking
yeah, it was
precedent
like
or whatever.
it was not nefarious. I think it was like well
Yeah,
intentioned, but I think it really crossed the line, and the amount of blowback that came from that event was just like, wow, the utility has locked me out of
right,
my
right. I've lost autonomy in my own home. No thanks.
exactly. So I think that was a very important learning point for the entire industry that like that's not going to fly.
Yeah,
Locking people out of their thermostat is just not something that you can do. And utilities need to come up with other strategies to mitigate in terms of how that control happens. So like Mysa has always said, you are always in control. You will always be able to go over to that thermostat, pull up the Mysa app and adjust your thermostat no matter what. There will never be a lock that prevents
amazing.
you from adjusting it. So like that's just like, yeah.
And are you also essentially anonymizing this data? Or can the utility kind of isolate down to your house?
Only if the homeowner had signed up to the terms and conditions that says, hey, data sharing is acceptable. So this is on a case by case program. Often utilities only care about the aggregate view, right? They want megawatts shifted, right?
Yeah.
So knowing about the individual device or customer is not that exciting as opposed to the actual aggregate. However, there are some programs where utilities are interested to learn a little bit more to either provide a better customer experience or to provide support to that end customer. So
Mm.
sometimes the customer will opt in and agree to terms and conditions to say, it is okay to share my name, my address, so that you can contact me for customer support and better offerings and customer experience. So it's on a program by program basis.
Okay. So people can participate on the demand response without actually giving up, their specific patterns of usage and their specific, like in a very like Joe at 273, Main Street
Yeah,
kind of
and
way.
again, it varies by program, right? Like, so for example, some programs you actually have to put in your utility account number
Mm.
because then they're linking that your utility account number and trying to reconcile with how much energy that you've actually used. So it depends on the program. Some kind of need more of that linking of data, and some others don't. So it kind of varies.
Okay.
But yeah, so data privacy is extremely incredible. Same thing with cybersecurity, right? Like a bad actor potentially, if they had access to being able to control thousands of thermostats,
Oh, right. I never thought of that.
like
Right,
that would
right.
be
Someone just
they
turns
could be
everybody
doing
down to 6
they,
degrees. Yeah.
or do the opposite of a DR event, right? Like if
Right. Crank the heat to 40. Right.
which then
Or
would put pressure on the utility grid. So it's
right.
doing the opposite, right, of a demand response event.
Right.
So with great power comes great responsibility about making sure that these devices and these systems, the software is extremely secure. And Mysa spends a very large amount of our effort on that front about cybersecurity. And as anybody knows anything about cybersecurity, that is an ongoing 24/7, all the time thing as
Right.
things happen, right? So it's a continuous focus.
And I imagine the utility companies are very eager to support you and kind of be a part of those conversations and help, or is it
Yes,
something they leave
yeah.
you to?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on which utility, but
Yeah.
I just give a shout out again to BC Hydro. They were one of the ones that did help us in the early days navigate that cybersecurity. We went through a series of audits and making sure that that was got the right penetration testing on our devices. And BC Hydro was very gracious to help us with that in the early days.
Amazing. Well, that's a good full circle, I think, to wrap up on coast to coast innovation. Shout
Yeah,
out to BC
absolutely.
on the West Coast, BC Hydro, true leaders and pioneers in this space. And shout
Yeah.
out to Newfoundland and St. John's for really picking up the mantle here and doing some great work in not just Canada, but in the States too. You guys are cranking out in the US.
Yeah,
So
we about half of our business is in the United States as well, so it's a good mix.
yeah, Josh, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today. It's really, really great to hear of so much Canadian innovation that is happening in the space. If you're a homeowner or a building owner, check out Mysa, get one installed, do your part. It's really easy to do, and in the context of deep retrofits, which we're involved in a lot, the order of operations is a big topic, and what do you do when and why so that you're not redoing stuff. And one of the nice
Yes,
things about a smart thermostat is, you're not really precluding the next thing or the next thing or the next thing. It's an easy win, and it'll start benefiting you tomorrow. And then,
that's right.
you want to change your furnace a year from now, you want to go to something higher efficiency, you want to add that heat pump, nothing's stopping you from doing that.
That's right.
You're just stacking benefits. So
Yeah,
thank you so much. I hope everybody got a lot of value out of today, and we'll have to have you back on in another couple of months for a follow up.
that sounds great. And like, I'm a very reachable, open book person. If people like to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm always connecting with folks. I love to learn other people in the industry. So please, anyone can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I'd love to chat.
Amazing. And your website is getmysa.com.
.com. That's
Right.
right.
GETMYSA.com.
You got it.
Check it out, everybody. You got incentives in your local area. And if you don't, reach out to your utilities and tell them you want one.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Josh. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.